Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Neuro Life Skills with Dr. Federley and myself, Dr. Longyear. We have a great guest on this time around, and Claire Bacon, a clinical nutritionist. If you guys remember back an episode or so ago, we had Dr. Bob Bacon on, and that was a lot of fun, but we really needed to bring the brains of the operation in. So we brought Claire in, who is his wife, and they practiced together. So I'm really excited to have this chat, and especially we kind of delayed the release of this one a little bit more into Valentine's Day because we're going to get into hormones, which is a really busy space and a big topic, and males and females are different. And from a neurological perspective, there's been a lot more research in this lately as well, in how men's brains and women's brains are a little bit different, both structurally and how they work, and even neurodevelopmentally and kind of timing and how we go through things. And so we're going to jump into some of those topics and kind of have some fun with it. I always preface this, maybe somewhat of a controversial topic is the left brain versus right brain, and men being more left brain and women being more right brain. And I want to kind of preface this by saying we're speaking more in generalities of that. So when we talk about that, take it, with that understanding that it's in general, men typically fall more into that and females typically fall more into the right. Nobody's all one thing and not the other. Life kind of exists in the gray areas, and our world and our life and our society kind of pushes us more from one to the other as well. So when we talk about these things, we talk more in generalities, and it's meant to just as a jumping off point of how the brain functions and how we kind of get to things. Because when you get into this space of hormones, and it really is a busy space, just like neuroscience is too, but I feel like the metabolic thing, it's so confusing. There's so many diets out there for this, or hormone fixes out there for that. There's thyroid this, adrenal that, estrogen this, testosterone that. There's a low T clinic on, I think, every corner at this point. So it's a really busy space, both commercially and clinically. Like there's a lot going on there. We were nerding out before the lights went on, so to speak, and it was fun, some of the conversation that just kind of came up in talking about what we were going to talk about, right? And in a vacuum, everything's easy. But unfortunately, our hormones, our brain, none of that stuff exists in a vacuum. So I'm really excited for you guys to get a perspective on this. We say clinical nutritionist, but she's really a hormone expert in this area, and how to balance these things out, because it's tough, and there's a lot of people out there that, and you kind of alluded this when we were chatting earlier, there's a lot of people out there that are already doing so much for hormones.
Well, they think they're doing a lot for their hormones. They think they're doing the right thing, but really maybe they haven't received the education that they need to fully understand like the whole big picture. I think people start, going to Dr. Google, and they try to figure things out for themselves, and they think they're taking like the shortest path to feeling better. But a lot of people who are doing that, I think, are missing the boat. And I think a lot of people going to health professionals like maybe are isolating, like looking at, well, I just need to work on my thyroid, or I just need to get my estrogen level up, and then that will just fix all my problems. But like you said, these things are complex and they're all intertwined, and everything in your lifestyle is going to have an impact on that. Your stress level, of course, like probably more than anything. Because what happens when you get stressed out? Your cortisol level comes up, and that actually brings insulin up along with it, even if you're not eating sugary foods. And that constant onslaught of the cortisol and the insulin has an effect on the brain. The hippocampus gets affected, and that's like your short-term memory center. So how are you?
She's nerding out. She's beating me to the punch on all the neuro. I love it. No, keep going. So.
But it's like, how are you supposed to like think straight when you're under stress? So it seems to be like that's kind of the underlying reason why so many things like first go out of control.
Yeah, and I think we kind of have a saying in our clinic: is stress sucks, and we've talked a lot about the effect it has on the brain. But when we fire stress, or when we have stress, and we watch TV basically at this point in our world, we drive into the amygdala, we drive into the limbic brain, and we've talked about this in the past. It shunts blood away from two key areas, right? It takes blood and resources away from the prefrontal cortex and the cerebellum, and those, the front part of your brain is responsible for you being human. It's responsible for social interaction. It's responsible for seeing the big picture. It's responsible for cognition and planning and complex thought. And then the cerebellum is what balances and coordinates our brain and our nervous system. So when we shunt blood away from those things and we get into stress, electrically we're taking, or blood-wise, but then taking away the electrical control system for all of those things. And that's why I'm kind of ready to nerd out here and hear what she's got to say on this, because she already jumped into a lot of brain areas just based off the metabolic aspect. And when we shut down the front part of our brain and the back part of our brain, the cerebellum and prefrontal cortex, we drive more limbic and we lose what we refer to as the electrical control of the body. And that's what we think of as brain. Brain really is more about inhibition and control than it is really doing anything. And if we lose the electrical control, the chemical control system really starts to take over. And those are located deeper in the brain. Your hypothalamus, where she already was kind of going into hypothalamus, hippocampus. All of those areas start to get affected. So when we drive out of that functional area or that functional system, another system's got to take over. And that's where now we really start to see this. And if you guys are doing this journey, you've probably heard of what they call the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal system. It's a buzzword, right? It's something that people use a lot. It's not maybe that simple, but it's something that I think a lot of people already understand. So as we lose that electrical control, Claire, kind of go into a little bit of chemically what we think might be happening from hypothalamus, and how do we start to regulate stress from a chemical perspective?
Well, with the HPA axis, basically that's the way that your endocrine system is communicating the hypothalamus, the pituitary to the adrenals, and then of course the thyroid is connected along with that. So your all the various different glands in your endocrine system, they're constantly secreting hormonal messages to tell the other one whether I've got enough or whether I need more, and here's what I've got for you. And then, they're all talking to each other. Like, your hormones don't just exist. Like, you have X amount of estrogen and then that's all you get. Like, your body is converting estrogen to testosterone to progesterone. Like, there's this whole complicated pathway, and like I'm not even going to attempt to go into all that without a chart.
We should have that in the background. Picture.
Right, but one part of the body is always working on trying to compensate for something else if it's not keeping up. So your adrenals and your thyroid together, even though they're separate and they have different functions and different hormones, they're actually like two ox in a yoke. Okay. So one can't go too fast without dragging the other along, and then if one gets fatigued and exhausted, it's going to drag the other one back. So we use that analogy all the time to explain to people that if you know that you have diagnosed hypothyroidism, and if you want to work on getting that better, you also have to work on addressing, what's causing the adrenals also to be fatigued and slowed down, right? So yeah. they go together.
I mean, it's just not TSH, and it's that simple, and we take this thing and we take our bioidentical hormone and it fixes everything, right? And then there's rainbows and unicorns in the background.
If everything was cookie cutter, then everyone could just get on Dr. Google, and in 5 minutes you would just have the perfect answer.
But Dr. Google's awesome. He's so great. But I love how you brought that thyroid piece in, because that's what we see a lot, right? Is people come in and they're like, yeah, my TSH was this, so they told me I have Hashimoto's or hypothyroid, and they get this bioidentical hormone, and then what happens?
Well, actually, it takes a really long time. I say to get a true Hashimoto's diagnosis, because most MDs are not even running the thyroid antibody tests right off the bat. Usually they take a look at TSH and they don't bother to go into free T3, free T4, reverse T3 to see what's going on in the mix. And it may take years before someone clues in enough to run the antibody test and then go further with it. So people, I feel are suffering for kind of a long time and bouncing around between different professionals until they finally get some answers.
Yeah, I know you guys see the same thing in your office, and we typically see, most of the time, by the time they get to us, it's we're requesting 5 different doctors' records, because they saw this person for this, this person for this, this person for this, and nothing kind of got them anywhere. But, and even you just kind of rattled off a bunch of stuff, T3, T4, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies. Most people don't, they're testing one thing, when they go to most doctors.
A lot of times.
They don't get to kind of play with that and or understand what's going on because they're looking at TSH, which is one number, and they're not measuring some other things that are going on. So what symptoms, so from a hormonal perspective, what symptoms are like maybe the big 3 or 4 that you guys see the most?
I would say most often people come in because they have stubborn weight gain that won't go anywhere. They're tired. Everyone's tired. And probably a little bit foggy in the brain. Like it's just hard to think. You know, even oftentimes people don't realize that it's a low thyroid symptom to sort of wake up with a dull headache that maybe just hangs around for like an hour or two. And when that goes away, maybe they just attribute it to, you know, finally my coffee kicked in and my headache went away.
We hear, oh, that's not normal. Like when they say, oh yeah, when you ask them if they have a headache, every morning, but it's just my normal headache.
Yeah, it's just a normal thing, right? And so.
Well, also that idea, like how you mentioned, a lot of people rely on things that are supplemental. So like the coffee hits at 2 o'clock and then my food is then going to drive my glucose up a little bit for a little spurt of energy. So a lot of times people end up kind of relying on a form of synthetic energy as opposed to having their organs function well and really supporting the actual issue. So like you guys mentioned perfectly, is that a lot of the paperwork that we get, we see numbers from this and numbers from this, and they're great as a snapshot, but often the support of the person doesn't come into play, meaning that they may give them a supplement for a short time and say, okay, we're stepping away and see what happened. But often it's not that the number spontaneously went down or changed or just got worse over time. It's that the systems or the stress levels are running them into the ground. So it often is nice to see another side of it, is because we see the brain part where we say, okay, we read all these symptoms and we also see this is how the body is responding to stress. And over time, it leads to things where the body runs itself, where thyroid might be affected, this whole HPA might be affected, and then all of a sudden, their whole binaural rhythm goes off, where they're not able to really sleep, wake correctly, or they're not getting hungry at the times where they should, that should drive energy systems. So every once in a while what we can do is we can almost hack that system in a way, along with some other nutritional pieces that help jumpstart some of that, in a sense, the binaural rhythm, whether it be for tools that we've used in the past were things like intermittent fasting to regulate some pieces, or even giving them some nighttime routines so they can sleep a little bit better. So it's just great to hear all the other pieces that go in with this to support some of the stuff that we see so often in the office.
So a good nighttime routine is watch Law and Order right before bed.
Right, super scary movies, thrilling, yeah, keep you on the edge of your seat. Exactly.
Well, it's always good to spike cortisol and then go to sleep.
Yeah.
Right, that's kind of the normal thing. You know, and I think we do a lot of this, and you hit on some really good points of, you know, we drive ourselves artificially. And I think the biggest way that we drive ourselves artificially is, you know, sugar. I think is maybe the number one thing, and we don't think of this. One of my favorite quotes is, food is the most overused drug in the world and exercise is the most underused treatment. And you know, I think you know, you often hear this idea of comfort foods, right? And you know, I just need a little bit of sugar, I need to pick me up, or I need a coffee or a caffeine boost, right? So, but that really messes with not only our brain, because sugar's inflammatory, but how does a high sugar diet mess with our hormones even? It's got to have some effect there, right?
Well, a high sugar diet, I mean, obviously that's going to be super inflammatory to the body. So sugar is the number one most inflammatory food you can put in the body, and it's going to aggravate any kind of condition that you're dealing with. So for from a stress response, you know, it's going to increase cortisol. Obviously, it's going to increase insulin. And so basically your internal metabolic aspect, like everything's on fire. How can you expect anything to work properly, you know, when you have an internal system like that? So sugar and you know, finding some other snacks and other ways to maintain proper blood sugar during the day is really the number one first place you should go to when trying to get a handle on your hormones. And then also, like you mentioned, exercise. Yes, you want to exercise, I would say to the point of generating a sweat, you know, but extreme exercise can also take you in the opposite direction. So through the hormone testing that we do in the office, I've seen some very dysfunctional, like some dysfunctional testing and grafts, and then been able to work with that, using herbs and nutrition and like making steps along the way. I've been able to see, the same person's hormone test become a whole lot better, and then take the exercise to the extreme and train for like some ultra distance, really long, like lots of cardiovascular exercise, probably way too much. And I've seen what happens to estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and DHEA all along the way. So when you're exercising, like, okay, training for a 10K or, something reasonable and moderate, it's like good for the body, but taking it to the extreme, doing like multiple marathons in a year, multiple Ironmans in a year, like you can really kind of destroy what's happening with your other hormones. So like I've seen it on paper, like a month-long either saliva or urinary test, you can see this. You're supposed to have like a really nice high bell curve of estrogen in the first half of the month, and then a nice bell curve of progesterone, like to match that and to balance out the estrogen in the second half of the month. Well, if all of your energy and all of your raw materials are going towards the exercise, then what you wind up with is actually two parallel lines of hormones that are actually like not doing anything.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, are existing under that scenario and like not even realizing it, thinking, they have all these other motivating factors why they want to exercise that much. But then they wonder, why is my skin so dry? Why is my hair so brittle? Why is my hair falling out? Why am I fatigued and exhausted? Or why am I getting sick all the time? There's like a whole pattern of other symptoms that come into play when your hormone levels are very low. Yeah. It's almost kind of like premature aging. Like taking a 30-year-old that's pushing so hard, and then she doesn't realize that she's actually exhibiting hormone patterns that would be more appropriate for someone in their late 50s, early 60s.
Well, I don't even think it's almost premature aging. I think it is, right? And that's what, they're seeing with the research now is that, we measure telomeres to see age of cell. And when we measure telomeres with stress, we actually see shorter telomeres. And if you look at some of the numbers out there, our generation is the first generation that isn't going to outlive our parents. Meaning, my parents are supposed to live longer than what my life expectancy will be because of and there's a whole bunch of things, and we could really go down some rabbit holes with this, but the food we eat isn't food, it's actually a stressor to us. Mm-hmm. When we stress, we burn through B vitamins and that, the brittle hair and bad skin. And we kind of rob Peter to pay Paul. We push through a lot of things in life, and I love how you said that, we burn up the building blocks for other things. So when you drive cortisol, which is a steroid hormone, you don't have the same building blocks to now make things like testosterone and estrogen appropriately. Mm-hmm. So that's why you see a low T clinic here and a low T clinic there, and you got this person on bioidentical estrogen and that person, right? It's
like the saddest thing because there are so many people out there on cholesterol lowering medications, and in the other world, like it's like there's no bottom end of normal. Like we know that there's an ideal range of cholesterol, total cholesterol, let's say somewhere between 180, 220, maybe 230, like would be great. So like as you age, you bioaccumulate lots of inflammation. And so how does the body deal with that? It will produce more cholesterol as needed in order to patch the inflammation in different places in the body. So you want to have enough cholesterol to patch the inflammation, but then also have enough left over to make your steroid sex hormones, all the things that you need to stand up, have energy, like live a fun life, like, and all of the other things. Like I had a guy came to me, and he was an older gentleman. He was, I don't know, must have been like around 70, but his cholesterol level was very low. He had been on statin drugs for a long time, and he came in kind of complaining, like he wanted to get back to the life that he had before. He kind of described it to me as sort of Shangri-La, and he told me that he had a very young, beautiful wife, and things were not going the way he wanted in that department. Okay. So I had to have this conversation with him about optimizing his cholesterol levels. Of course, we can't tell anyone what to do with a medication that they're taking, but I I asked him to please go back to his doctor and, you know, maybe explain what he was going through, because to me he was exhibiting some signs of low cholesterol, even things like with his memory, you know, plus the other.
And so she said some really big stuff there, and I just want to kind of go back, because guys, if you're listening, and girls too, cholesterol has a job. I think cholesterol's kind of gotten a bad rap in our society, and we tie it to heart disease and tie it to all these things, and you know, we automatically reach for a statin. At one point they wanted to put it in the water, right, to keep cholesterol lower. Cholesterol's created in your body because it has a job. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's there to help clean your system up when it's having issues. Cholesterol isn't the problem, it's actually a solution to the problem. And we put all these people, I think we're still kind of stuck in this rut of go on a low cholesterol diet, lower your cholesterol, do this. Now, maybe 400 for a cholesterol level, not good, right? There's too much inflammation, your body's overcompensating. But we need to be really careful with the cholesterol story, right? Because cholesterol is an energy molecule, it's an anti-inflammatory. It really only causes problems when there's a lot of inflammation, and it actually causes a plaquing. But when we lower it way too low, we lose the ability to create other hormones that cholesterol is a precursor for. So guys, if you're having trouble in that department, like you said, it's not necessarily a testosterone shot that you need, because what's going to happen, you're going to steal that testosterone and you're going to create more issues.
Well, that's a huge question, and some people just, you know, they just get on board with the taking of the testosterone, and they never go back to monitor what's the body doing with all that excess hormone that's in, like, you know, one department, you know, like one spot, because it doesn't stay static in the body. And I don't see it very often that other professionals are checking to see, well, what are the downstream metabolites? What's happening with all this excess testosterone? What's the body doing with it? Is it converting to DHT? And you might see changes with, you know, hair thinning, hair falling out. Is it converting to excess estrogen? And men may continue to, like, gain weight or, you know, get what we call man boobs. Is he getting more emotional? You know, more female-like, you know, more sensitive, more, you know, just kind of laid back and like letting her run the show, as opposed to being like the man who's like in control and driving. So when you start messing around with hormones, I mean, they're so powerful. Even like a teeny tiny little pill, you know, like that, or a teeny tiny little pellet, over time, if your body is not fully neutralizing and eliminating that hormone properly from your body, it can really create some huge problems. So we like to take a look at either the Dutch Complete or like another salivary kind of panel to see like what's happening downstream, like how is the body methylating and getting rid of the excess.
Yeah, because, you know, again, you said some huge things in there. If guys will tend to aromatize testosterone into estrogen, and they actually become more feminine, right? And when you mess with that balance, simply taking a testosterone supplement kind of drives you further down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And you end up with guys who become more feminine and less in control and less testosterone, less driving. And we always kind of jokingly say that guys' brains, because estrogen is more neuroprotective, and that's why guys will aromatize it into estrogen. And so as a guy ages or becomes more estrogen driving with stress, he decreases his ability to make testosterone, and he drives out of that picture. And as guys decrease their testosterone, they lose muscle mass, they drive more into Parkinson's. So the typical picture you see from a neurological perspective is as these hormones start to deregulate, guys get Parkinson's disease, and the wife then has to be the caretaker, because we aromatize estrogen or testosterone into estrogen. We lose that frontal control. We become more, we lose our dopamine stores because we become more mesencephalic, more limbic. We drive out of that, and then they have to take care of our movement disorder. And after we pass, then the damage was done, and you guys end up then with Alzheimer's.
Well, wouldn't you also agree that there's a huge environmental factor in kind of driving that, you know, reaction towards Parkinson's? You know, aluminum is so prevalent like in our daily lifestyle. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
so in addition to, looking at your hormones and trying to figure out, so what do I need to take to balance this, there are so many lifestyle factors we have to look at to make sure you're not sending yourself down a road of hormonal dysregulation in the future. Like with the aluminum, wearing antiperspirant, or like any number of things, all of the cosmetics and personal care products like the parabens, the phthalates,
And that's
you
where
name
we're
it.
going to have to bring you back for another topic. 'Cause
That's like,
that, I mean, honest to God, guys, you guys don't realize how important all of this stuff is. 'Cause, I mean, your antiperspirant has aluminum in it, right? And aluminum's toxic, but that's there's so many things that you need to cut your exposure down to. And check out their Facebook page. I saw you guys post, and I think you posted some things about the brands that we should avoid because of, one, they're just not good people, but two, they have these chemicals and things that are in them as well.
right.
So there's some really cool things there, but as we kind of wrap this, what are some takeaways from the hormone perspective? Because, we covered a lot of ground as far as testosterone and estrogen and cortisol being kind of the big driver, cholesterol. What are some takeaways that people can do maybe to start, or where can they look for more resources on this?
Okay. Well, gosh, each of the things that I might like to mention, we could probably talk a good bit about. Okay, so I would say adaptogenic herbs are a huge solution for a lot of people. So I feel like a lot of people jump right into doing like a bioidentical or some kind of a synthetic medication when you could actually kind of back it up and do a more conservative approach with adaptogenic herbs first, because they're a lot more likely to normalize your hormones. They're not going to push you in any one direction, either like too high or too low, because there's like a natural synergy between different herbs and working with the body just to help nourish and restore the glands that should be producing these hormones to begin with. A lot of times, the hormones might diminish for a while, and like a woman might think, oh, well then it's my time, I'm the right age, I'm going into menopause. But then once we give some certain supplements, adaptogens, maybe, some ashwagandha or some licorice or some wild yam or something to just kind of nourish that system, sometimes like her cycle might come back, like she wasn't really done, her system was just tired. So adaptogenic herbs, for females, there are many choices. Actually, herbs are not even really male or female. You can use them like interchangeably. Tribulus is like a #1 male stamina, vitality enhancing herb, but we often use it for women as well. And not just older women, sometimes we'll use Tribulus for women like if they just have scanty menses, like teenagers who, or even 20-year-olds, like who their cycle just kind of goes away and it just hasn't been around in a few months, and it's it's part of that dysregulation. Sometimes it's not in excess, everything's like too low. So Tribulus is like a big vitality builder, and some of these things are commonly available. Like a lot of people are doing maca root in their smoothies, or moringa powder in their smoothies. So like smoothies are a great way to get more nutrient-dense superfoods into your diet.
Okay.
So anything you can do to try to diminish eating like the processed foods and the sugar, like the Pop-Tarts and other toaster strudels or whatever, bagels and cream cheese things in the morning, and then go to more something that's nutrient dense, where you could have like vegetables in your smoothie with some super greens or like other types of herbs. Would be a really good choice.
Cool. So what I heard there was, don't eat processed foods and sugar,
Right.
and then find someone that knows what they're talking about. Because she said a whole bunch of $13 words in there.
Okay.
And that's really the big thing is, guys, we can try to do a lot of this on our own, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people kind of burn their system out in doing too much on their own. But, I think eliminating the processed foods and the sugar, I think everybody can do that. Exercising more, but exercising within reason too. And then find somebody like her who knows all those words she just said to help you really navigate the rest of it. Because there's a lot of things, even the adaptogens, there's a ton of them out there. And the tribulus that you get at the gas station, guys,
Might not be the best quality.
yeah, we might want to find one that's maybe a little bit better. And you know, I'm not bashing things, but
Yeah.
things you get at big box stores, they did research on this a few years ago. The supplements you get at a big box store, while they're more cost effective, they're also mostly plastic or silicone more specifically. There is a difference to the medicines, or not medicines, the supplements and things like that you get from your doctor or you get from a healthcare professional.
Big time.
So pay attention to that. They're more potent, so you can use less of them. So in the long run, it's actually cheaper than having to put a bunch of plastic into your body and then process that too, right? So, so yeah,
Right.
cool. I really
Good stuff.
appreciate you coming on. I think we're gonna have to get her back because we didn't even scratch the surface. We looked at the surface to this topic and really getting into hormones, and you know, she started down the trail of things like aluminum and heavy metals and our exposures to that. So I think you'll see more of Claire in the future as we try to unravel some of that stuff, and we might even bring her husband back just to throw him a bone so he doesn't feel so bad. But we'll see how that all plays out. But thank you guys. We'll put some links in our bio for this one because she said a lot of things, and you know, we want you guys to be able to use these people as resources as they come on, and so we'll put some links to some Facebook pages and some other ways that you can get some information, because I know for you, hormones is a lifelong kind of learning thing, and I think for everybody it is.
And personal.
Yeah.
Yes. Very personal.
Yeah, we all have our journey and our story that we've been through, and so those things, I encourage you to check her out and Dr. Bacon's website and learn about that and really see, especially, you know, your big ones that you talked about, trouble losing weight, trouble sleeping, brain fog. Everybody has that. So I think we all probably need some help with our hormones and our hormonal regulation. So thank you guys. We'll see you for the next Neuro Life Skills.